Hey, what's up, guys? This is David Chase Taylor of 911truther.org. Today is June 11th, 2024. So, based on breaking news and events, it appears that CIA headquarters, located beneath CERN at Lake Geneva in Switzerland, is going to stage a watershed moment in time, a DEFCON level event, an international emergency surrounding the arrival of 4 Russian ships in Cuba tomorrow, June 12th, 2024. Just for the record, Russia is sending 4 ships to Cuba, which will arrive on June 12th, Wednesday. This is the Admiral Gorshkov. It's a frigate. The Kazan nuclear submarine, the Nikolai Chaiker, which is a tugboat, as well as the Passion oil tanker, is set to arrive in Havana, Cuba on June 12th. In response to this buildup of Russian naval ships in Cuba, the U.S. has deployed the destroyer USS Truxtun, the missile destroyer, the USS Donald Cook, and the USS Delbert Black, which is also a destroyer, as well as a Coast Guard cutter called the Stone, as well as a Boeing P-8 Maritime Patrol aircraft. So essentially what's going on is the CIA is planning to stage a new Cuban-like missile crisis involving Cuba, the United States, and Russia in Cuba, less than 90 miles off the coast of Cuba. So if you'll recall, back on October 16th through 28th of 1962, John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert F. Kennedy were involved with Fidel Castro and Russian President Nikita Khrushchev in respect to the Cuban Missile Crisis, which almost triggered World War III. So essentially what the CIA is doing is they're sending all these ships to Cuba in the hopes that they're able to stage some sort of apocalyptic DEFCON level event. So in the 2024 version of the Cuban Missile Crisis, it appears that Joe Biden, along with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Cuban leader Miguel Diaz-Canel, are going to basically be the key players. So exactly what is planned is obviously not known, but the most likely scenario is that the CIA stages a redux of the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty off the Sinai Peninsula in the Mediterranean Sea back on June 8th of 1967. So this was basically a preemptive attack by the United States, or by the Israeli Navy, on the United States destroyer called the USS Liberty. The attack happened or transpired for over 3 hours, and many Americans died. This is why I always highlight the fact that the Mossad, the IDF, and the Israeli Navy are enemies of the United States, because they, at key junctures, stab America in the back. And this is most likely what will happen in this particular scenario, is that the U.S. Navy are sending their ships down there, and then you have Russian ships, and so the Israeli Navy will either attack the Russian ships, so it'll appear as an American attack, or they'll attack the American ships that appear as a Russian attack, when in reality it is the Israeli Navy. Other potential scenarios include, but are not limited to, the following. So back on January 11th of 2002, George W. Bush opened the Guantanamo Bay detention center, which is filled with Islamic terrorists. So during this particular time period from June 12th, I'd say probably to the end of the month, June 30th, it's highly likely that the following scenarios may come to fruition in the event that the CIA forgoes a straight-up naval attack. So the most likely scenario in respect to the Gitmo is that the terrorists are freed, and then we'll take a raft or a boat to the Florida Keys or the Florida Peninsula, and then enter the United States. This will obviously trigger martial law, deployment of the U.S. National Guard, and they'll erect checkpoints all across the United States to hunt for these terrorists. Back on November 18th of 1997, a CIA attack plan called Operation Northwoods was declassified. And in this particular, you can Google this, it's on Wikipedia, it's now declassified, but back in the 60s, the CIA had developed this plan, which was for a false flag. So that's basically staging an attack, blaming it on your enemy. So it was a false flag Cuban attack targeting a U.S. naval base in Guantanamo. So this may also be an option for the CIA to blow up the U.S. naval base in Guantanamo and blame the Russian ships, and said attack may be in nuclear nature, which is why the Russians are bringing a nuclear submarine. Northwoods also featured mass shootings by Cuban nationals targeting Miami, Florida, and Washington, D.C., hijackings of commercial and military aircraft, most likely for 9/11 style attacks, and then the bombings and sinkings of U.S. naval vessels, which I obviously mentioned earlier. So it's imperative to note that in the last 2 years, a number of events have been going on in respect to U.S.-Cuban relations. Aside from the fact that Obama, when he was president, let's say reinstalled diplomatic relations with Cuba, when Trump was in office, he designated Cuba a terrorist state, but that has since been rescinded. And in the wake of that, the CIA has been very busy in Cuba. So back on May 6th of 2022, they staged a bombing at the Ambassador Hotel in Havana, Cuba. So when the CIA stages a bombing attack, it's usually for multiple reasons. So the most likely in this scenario is that they planted some sort of a bomb inside that particular hotel, or they are using the hotel to launch a secondary attack. A few months later, on August 5th of 2022, the CIA bombed a Cuban oil terminal at Manzanas, Cuba. So this was a huge oil depot, and then they bombed it, it blew up. So that particular location may have weapons or may be rigged or wired for a huge attack. Back in November 9th of 2016, the Cuban nationalist forces executed a 5-day anti-terror drill in which they, quote-unquote, were dealing with a, quote-unquote, range of enemy actions. So this means that they were practicing for multiple scenarios, which I believe will come to fruition between June 12th and June 30th of 2024. Last but not least, so there's something called Havana syndrome. You can Google it, but it's basically a medical condition that's been suffered by people in the U.S. Embassy in Cuba and other locations in Florida. And this is basically because the CIA has created this false narrative that located on the island of Cuba is this massive microwave weapon, otherwise known as a direct energy weapon, or DEW, D-E-W. And that this microwave weapon is being used to make people sick, to vomit, to throw up, to feel nauseous, etc. You can do your own research on it. But the most likely scenario is that the CIA has satellite-based direct energy weapons which can basically neutralize what we consider as indestructible matter, such as steel ships, anything from diamonds to earth to water, etc. So this is how I believe that the condominium building that fell down in Miami, Florida, a few years ago was a result of this, not from Cuba, where they say this top secret Russian Cuban weapon is located, but rather from satellite based direct energy weapon attacks. Consequently, if you remember the Philadelphia experiment from the 60s, I believe it was, where these weapons were used to to make a ship basically invisibility cloak was used by the U.S. Navy to make ships disappear. Well, in this case, this direct energy weapon would be used to incinerate or to destroy or to sink U.S. naval vessels, and then it would be subsequently blamed on this top secret direct energy weapon or microwave weapon that's located on the island of Cuba. There's also the high possibility that during the presence of these Russian ships in Cuba, that the CIA will frame Russia for a direct energy weapon attack on Miami. So this is why they staged this zombie pandemic in Miami back in, I believe, 2014, is because once these waves hit you, it blows out your eardrums, it fries your brain, and then you just walk around like all crazy. And this is what they plan to do. And this may happen while these ships are there, because it makes it look like Russia's involved. Last but not least, it's imperative to note that during this time period, while these Russian Navy ships are in Cuba, it's virtually certain, 99.999% certain, that the CIA is going to stage a dissolution of presidency event targeting Vladimir Putin. So this may be a Islamic terrorist coup, it may be a military rebellion, a military mutiny. The report I have to publish right now is in respect to a Russian generals overthrowing Putin in respect to the failed Ukrainian offensive in the Russo-Ukrainian war. But mark my words, when these ships are in Cuba, the CIA is going to get rid of Vladimir Putin, specifically to install a hardline communist dictator that is going to trigger World War III. Now, as I have disclosed ad nauseum over the last few years, Switzerland is the first Jewish state. The second Jewish state, so Switzerland was created around 1300. I've surmised it as 1309. But in 1917, the CIA staged the Bolshevik Revolution, which was a Jewish revolution in Russia, which overthrew the Russian oligarchs, and they killed probably over 100 million people. Well, a few short years later, they created in eastern Russia the second Jewish state, which is called Jewish Autonomous Oblast, or JAO. You can Google it. And the flag of this is a rainbow-colored flag, which is eerily similar to the LGBTQ flag. The point I'm trying to make here is that Switzerland, which is the first Jewish state, is directly in command and control of JAO, which is the second Jewish state, which is in charge of Russia, I believe, or de facto control of Russia. So what the point I'm trying to make is that whatever happens in Cuba in the next few weeks, with these Russian ships and with these American ships all converging less than 90 miles off the coast of Florida, is directly being authored by Switzerland, namely Geneva, which is home to the CIA, which is running the whole show. And their third Jewish state, which is Israel, is marked as the first Jewish state, when in reality it's the third. So it's really imperative to note that. And one way to corroborate this is that this Jewish state was formed on May 7th of 1934. And Vladimir Putin was installed as Russia's president on May 7th of 2012. So that's showing you in a de facto manner that they're actually pulling the strings. So in the event that World War III commences in Cuba or elsewhere, we can lay the blame at the feet of Switzerland and their proxy state, which is Russia. Lastly, I kindly ask that if any of the following or the aforementioned scenarios come to fruition, I kindly ask that you download this video and share it with local, state, and federal law enforcement, military, and intelligence officials, as well as with local, national, and international media outlets. And please, if you can, share this video and pray that nothing happens, where we basically have World War III on the horizon. So praying for a peaceful month. Peace.